We're back.
Hey y'all.
And we have Mr. David M. to share his story today. You are going to love it. He is vivacious. He's so kind. He's one of the calmest, most patient people I've ever met. And that says a lot coming from me. I'm so hyper, but he is so calm and polite and kind. And I know you're going to love his story today. So, David, take it away.
Mhm. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Christy. I appreciate you asking me to come here and share with you and our audience. Um, it's interesting. I wanted to start with this, Amy. It's still difficult to accept compliments for me. And I was sitting here and I was, part of me was like this, and the other part of me is like, stop some more, bring it on, because I I love to hear those things about me. And there's a part of me that believes you. I know you're being authentic, and I know that I'm that person because people tell me. So there's still that little bit of low self-esteem combined with grandiosity. However, random acts of kindness and doing the things that I need to do in program, as we were just talking about before we came on the air, working for God, doing differently, trying to make good decisions today.
Mhm.
Um, that's what it's all about. And that builds my confidence. It makes me feel good. It's completely removed the obsession to want to go back to the habits that I had when I got here, and it still amazes me. It still amazes me. It keeps my ego and my pride in check and continues to build on the humility because I know I did not do this myself. I surrendered myself, but I was gifted, and I'll talk about that. So, because I have some time to fill, we'll, start at what it was like. I grew up in a household, the youngest of three, two older sisters, um, parents that loved but didn't like each other and came from a culture of you stay together no matter what. They loved us, but both of them had some brokenness, which I've come to work on myself. My dad was a Holocaust survivor. What could you possibly anticipate somebody like that being able to give? And my mom came from a very dysfunctional family as well, and a poor, humble home in the Midwest. And so, my normal looking back, call it my normal, looking back was dysfunctional. That's a word that seems a little bit overused, but as Amy has shared with me many, many times, that 4 out of 4 families are dysfunctional. So, right away, I want to get competitive with that. But mine more than yours, which is silly. But the truth is, that was my normal. I came from that. It was scary growing up in a house like that because, again, I'm the youngest, and there was a lot of yelling, and there was a lot of feeling like something's not right here, even as a little kid. I remember one time I got in a fight with my dad. Didn't happen a lot when I was a kid because I stayed low, right? Get my head down. But I remember getting into an argument with my dad over something I don't even remember. And I was really young, probably around 6 or 7. And I ran into my mom with tears streaming down my face and I yelled at her and I said, "You married the wrong man." And many, many, many years later, like 15 years ago, she said, "I wasn't listening. I should have listened to you." Anyway, they were a match for each other, though. Like I said, there was a lot of brokenness, um, which I've come to make peace with. I don't, I'm not a victim. They didn't do that on purpose. It's just who they are or were. I also don't like to say that they did the best that they could because that makes me a judge, and only God should be doing that, not me. I
I love
just think,
I
yeah,
think
I
very
just
good.
Go
said
ahead.
like that before. I like that.
You know what? Most of my stuff is borrowed because it's so good, but that's an original. It hit me one day. It's not my place to say they did their, I couldn't go to my math teacher in the third grade when I got a D and say, well, I did my best, so maybe you should up that grade. They did what they did because that's all they knew how to do. And in doing my recovery work, I was able to dive, especially in steps 4 and 5, I was able to dive a lot deeper and be able to forgive and understand and be compassionate with that. Uh, so back to the household. My sister's 4 years older and about 7 years older than I am. Um, they were pretty wild and rebellious, and I followed in their footsteps. But like I said, I kept my head down. So the codependency that developed with me was more, trying to be cute and funny and control the temperature of the thermostat in the room, I like to say that way. So they might be fighting and arguing about anything, getting their schoolwork done or their homework, or they're not supposed to be dating that boy or wearing makeup too young or whatever it was that I was observing. And and I'd come into a room with a joke, you know. Priest, a minister, and a rabbi went into a bar, a little kid, because I was controlling it. They're like, isn't he cute and funny? And it would make a shift, right? So I learned to hone that skill, but I didn't realize I was doing it. I just knew that it was something that worked for me. And that whole time I wasn't comfortable either. And so while the focus in my family was on my dad building his business, my mom running the house, and my sisters doing whatever they were doing in school and getting in trouble as rebellious as we all became. Um, I would lie and I would say I did things. I would manipulate and just say what I thought that they needed to hear or wanted to hear and filter things out. There's that old like, look over here. And then I was doing whatever I was doing to stay out of trouble. I remember one time bringing home a pink slip, which wasn't a good thing at the school I went to because I got in trouble. I'm sure it was something like David talks entirely too much in something, which would be, par for the course for me. And I wouldn't bring it to my mom because my mom was a detective and she was the tough one. So I wouldn't bring it to her. I'd bring it to my dad, and he'd look at it for a second, and I'd go, "Oh, that is, we're going to the zoo on a field trip, right? Can just sign it. We're good." And he would trust me, and he'd sign it. He probably didn't even want to know. My mom would take a magnifying glass and a fine tooth comb if I handed her something, right, and figure out what's going on and so on. But the bottom line with both of them was I, in my head, gave them more authority than they really had and turned them more into law enforcement than parents, right? It's just what I did. And my sisters did the same thing, right? So you do whatever you do, but you don't tell mom and dad. That was the motto between the kids. We could trust each other, my two sisters and myself, but not them. So that's that really that's really how I developed. And somewhere around age 10, um, let me back up for a second. I was a cool little brother, right? And so they would take me with them places. As a matter of fact, when we got a little bit older, one of my sisters said, I feel sorry for some of the boyfriends I had because I always took you on like dates and things. They liked you and I felt safe if you came with us, right? So this cool little brother at age 10, they handed me a joint, and I don't know if this is AA, and I apologize for talking about dry goods, but it was a part of my story until my recovery began, and alcohol was always there. But anyway, so here I am with something in my hand, and I just know I'm supposed to do something with it because I'm 10 and everybody else is. It didn't even get a feeling from it. This is back in 1970. Like they rolled this joint with notebook paper and taped it because they didn't have any papers. Bunch of stems and seeds. Anyway, um, that was the start. But then that same year, our synagogue had a Passover dinner. And I remember going, and of course, in Passover dinner, there's wine. And in my culture, even though, drinking age is 21, that was allowed. Although my parents really didn't drink, but that was allowed. And I remember having a few cups of wine and getting lightheaded and feeling out of control. People thought it was cute because I was, drunk and playing with my friend who was also drunk and wound up literally under a table and being stupid, because we're little kids and, alcohol doesn't belong in our system anyway. So I remember that, and that was the first time, and I loved that feeling of being out of control. I loved whatever it was doing for me. It made me feel powerful and strong, and more than anything else, not anxious. As I got older, I realized I just didn't want to be right here, right now, and that's why I experimented with all the things I did, all the substances, because I didn't want to be here right now. And so, anyhow, those were my first experiences with it. And as I got older, experimented with a bunch of other stuff. And as junior high school started, and this was in the 70s, there, I hadn't connected with a lot of kids who were doing the same thing I was. But once I did, then, it was more or less off to the races. The progression of the disease started. And I never said, it's interesting because now, working in the field I do as a recovery coach and interventionist, I hear people a lot of times, younger people, saying things like, well, I used it for anxiety. And I'm like, I didn't know. It's not an excuse, it's an explanation looking back. I did not know why I liked it so much. It felt good. That's all that mattered. I knew I wasn't supposed to do it. And to be honest, I liked that too. I liked the sneaking of it. I liked the getting away with things of it. I liked the the feeling like, in a way, I was in control, that I could do that and nobody knew I was doing that. Or at least I thought. That didn't last a long time, because by the time I was 15, 16 years old, that's when I started getting in trouble and getting caught. Not just by my parents, law enforcement. I like to say I'm a really bad crook. I didn't do anything, fortunately, that was significantly intentionally harmful or violent, but the DUIs and possession charges and the driving while this and that, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them. And I no longer have shame. I'm not proud of them. But I realize that as part of my story, it helps other people when I talk about it. And that's brought it to a point where I can just state it as a fact. So here am in my teenage years, and, selling weed out of, rolled up in my socks to people in my gym class, and going to parties where I drank a lot, and got my first DUI when I was 16 years old, when I thought I fell asleep on the freeway, but it was that I had passed out on the freeway as a juvenile, and my dad was smart enough to leave me in jail overnight and then came out the next day. And this began a cycle for me that I look back on today and I say, oh my God, denial is so powerful that I didn't, for a second, even though those signposts were up in front of me, I didn't stop and go, maybe I have a problem. Maybe my brain's different. Maybe I'm an alcoholic. Maybe there's help for this. I just did what I did. And then getting caught, and the fines and the problems that came with it were, I want to say, my normal, and the cost of doing business, I guess. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. I got caught. I got in trouble. Rinse and repeat. And so I did that over and over again, many, many times. I'd go to court. I'd get a card, right? The court card. The judge would hand down the fine. I was functioning highly, so I had a really good job. I had worked for my father in a manufacturing facility, and I was wildly successful in that. And so I would take care of these things because I was only in jail for a short period of time, and I wouldn't let them know what happened to me. Take care of myself, probably cover it with a lie, and then pay for it because I could. go to DUI classes, and there's the court card. So I'd go and I'd meet lovely people like you. And you were so nice. And I really did like that social aspect. You were so kind to me. I remember a man who I can tell you his name because he's now deceased, Lee Manning. And he was such a peach. He sat down with me after an AA meeting and he said, "Tell me your story." And I was like, wow, I felt important and like somebody was listening to me. And so I told him what was going on, and he handed me a card I'll never forget. His business card had his name on it, and in each corner of the business card it said, no address, no phone, and a couple of no business, no money, something like that. So it was kind of a little gag thing. He's like, if you want to talk to me, I'll be here at this meeting. Right. And I thought, what a sweetheart, what a good man, how generous he is. Right. And I'd look around the room and I'd see the posters on the wall, let go and let God, and live and let live, and think, spelled with an M, right? And the 12 steps, which I recognized because I had been raised going to synagogue, Hebrew school, all that stuff. And I recognized the Judeo-Christian value in that, right? And the 12 traditions and principles and what all of it. And I thought, how nice. Isn't that nice for Amy? And isn't it nice for the other people that are in this room that they have a place to go and get well? Yeah, that's how sick I was. And that's how thick the denial is. So I like to say I'm a smart person, but I'm really slow. Like it takes me a long time to catch on to stuff. And here I am repeating the same behaviors, getting the same result. Some people say that's insanity. I couldn't agree more for me. And I think what finally happened to me was on St. Patrick's Day, which by the way is ironic because that's also Amy's recovery day. I outed you. 2005, right? I had this really low, sunken feeling, that incomprehensible demoralization, right? Incomprehensible. And we talk about that, and it talks about it in the big book. But for me, all I can tell you is how I felt. You might say, well, I felt like that too, but we don't really know. We do know that moment of clarity when I went, something's wrong with me, I'm sick. I'm 65 now. I was 44 years old. I had been ripping and running and doing all that stuff for 30 years. And finally, this one day, after a fight with my now ex-wife, admittedly, and she was yelling at me, but it clicked. And I went, I'm sick. I can't stop. Something's wrong with me. This isn't fun. I had lost a job that I was working for a friend of mine. Because as he said to me, no, we drink after work, David.
No, we drink after work.
My Cheerios turned to Beerios. I would drink and I'd go to work at 7 in the morning. I was running a building materials business for somebody who's still a good friend of mine. God bless him. And it was a nice, good sized business. But I also had an eviction notice. So I was close to being homeless. And life moves at the speed of pain for me. I had been beaten down so low that that moment of clarity and that feeling, looking back, I didn't know it at the moment, but looking back that was a moment of complete and 100% surrender for me, and it still makes me emotional. It still makes me emotional. Thank God, in a good way, because I can feel those feelings. I remember right where I was sitting in the driveway at my house going, what's wrong with me? I'm sick. I can't stop. And you know what came right after that? Foxhole prayer. God, help me. I'm sick. Will you please help me? I had been estranged from my mom and my dad for years. It's a part of the story I can jump back to in a second. But of course, who did I call? I called my mom because I was sick, and mom always took care of me when I was sick. So I called my mom and I said, Mom, I'm sick. I can't stop. Something's wrong with me. And like I said, we'd been estranged. And mom said, "Do you need to come home?" I said, "Yeah, I need to come and spend some time with you because I got to figure out what to do. I don't know." Fortunately, I came from a family that A was became successful enough, even though my parents were completely broke at one point, that was successful enough that there were some funds and my mom was willing to help me. And also that, she was a mom and I was asking for help. So I went to her house and I white knuckled, which I don't recommend for anybody because it's not healthy. But I just quit. I just stopped. It was magical for me looking back. But at the time, there were even some opportunities where, I went into a store or I went into a deli or, there was alcohol there and I just didn't want it because I knew I wanted to not continue in that cycle. And I talked to my mom, and she didn't know what to do. What you do in my family is when you're sick is you go to the doctor, but not only do you go to the doctor, you got to get the best doctor, right? You get the best doctor, the best lawyer, the best accountant, the best recovery coach. You get the best. So I don't know what that means. My mom doesn't know what that means. Just get help of any kind. If you can walk into the rooms and put a dollar in the basket, you get change for a dollar, I like to say. But I thought I needed something. I didn't know anybody who'd been to treatment or, what's also people call rehab. I didn't know anyone who had done that. I didn't know where to go. Mom certainly didn't know where to go. And back in those days, you pick up a yellow pages. So I pick up that phone book and I start looking in there. My mom lived in Los Angeles area, and we went to a couple places in Los Angeles. um, I called them to find out what it cost because I didn't have health insurance and asked them what you get. And they're like, "Oh, we have 800 count sheets and we have a private chef and you could ride a horse on the beach and all this other stuff." I'm like, eh. Called another place and got somewhat similar answer and it was all about amenities that I remember it that way. And then my mom goes, "Why don't you call the Betty Ford Center?" I mean, this was a name that a lot of us knew because it was a woman who was, the President of the United States, First Lady, and she had been very vocal and she had been very um, um, she had been very out, we'll say, with her ability to say, "This is what's going on with me." At one point with her breast cancer, and then at another point with this disease that I have. And so people knew that name. So I called there and I asked the woman who I'm still friends with who worked in the admissions department. Her name is Nikki. And I told her what was going on with me, and she said, "We'll call you back. I'm kind of busy right now." And I was like, "What?" And I got upset because don't you know who I am? I turned into a victim immediately. I spoke victimese, Amy. And I was like, "How dare you? I'm sick and I don't feel good. And I called you and I want to come in there and I'm blah, blah, me, 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 me." And she said, "If you'd like, I can give you a referral to a few other places." She was so nice to me. I mean, I was coming out with some words I'm not proud of. And she just said, "You know what? I can recommend another facility if you'd like." And I started crying heavily. Oh, it broke down. I was like, "You don't understand. I'm really sick and I don't feel good and I want help." Plus, I'm at my mom's for a few days and I felt terrible. I had so much shame around that and I didn't want to be with my mom and put it on her. And she just kept looking at me like she didn't know what to do. She did. Anyway, so this woman, Nikki, asked me a few questions, called me back eventually, and I said, "Well, how much is it?" And she told me, and I said, "Well, what do you get for that?" And she said, "Oh, honey, you get sober." True
Mm,
story.
wow.
And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Really?" And she said, "If you want, if you're willing to do the work." And I said, "Well, we can be there on Monday." And she said, "I'm not here on Monday, but I'll come in just to give you a hug and pass you off to someone." And she did that for me. I celebrated, Amy was with me. We both celebrated our anniversary, our birthdays
Yeah.
last year, and I had 20. And this woman was there amongst, yeah, isn't that amazing? Thank
Congratulations.
you.
I know. It was
Thank
amazing.
you, thank you, thank you. It still blows my mind. How's that possible? I'm not that smart or disciplined. How did that happen? I laugh because I know exactly what happened. But there were a lot of people that were at that party, and there were a lot of people, and I invited people to that party not to celebrate me, and it wasn't because I wanted to prove I was humble. I wanted to celebrate them and say thank you. I mean, these were people who were therapists and counselors and uh, people along the way. My sponsor was, there was a lot of people that were here so that I could say thanks for loving me because I didn't. I really appreciate you doing the things that you did and the patience because I know I was crazy and I still am, but just, it's a little bit more polished. I want to talk a little bit. Go
Crazy.
ahead. I'm sorry.
Polished crazy.
Polished crazy.
Polished crazy.
I see
Like
a
that.
new, yeah, I see a new license plate frame in my future.
Yeah.
Polished crazy. One of the things I didn't touch on before I got there, and then I'll jump back there to the treatment that I got, was I got in trouble not going to school. We had moved from one city to another city, and it was really different. As I mentioned, my dad worked really hard and he was really smart, completely uneducated, brilliant businessman. And he had built this really nice sized business. And we moved, and we moved from a neighborhood that, if you were able to get a job and buy some wheels to get around, that was cool. To a neighborhood with what kind of wheels? What are you driving? Where status was important and money was real important, where you lived, which side of the boulevard, all that wonderful crap. So I wasn't comfortable. I chose not to fit in. I would ride the school bus to school and then get on the city bus and go home. And we lived up on top of the hill. So I would walk home and I would just get high and drink and do whatever because my parents would go to work together building this business. And one day I came home and there was some bottles and paraphernalia and some other things right out in front when I opened the front door. And I went, oh shit. Uh-oh. Did I leave that there? Quick second. I don't think so because I know where I hid all my stuff. My parents said, we need to talk. And they were actually calm. Usually there was yelling and screaming and grounding and whatever they knew how to do. This was different. And the vice principal from the school had called home and said, David doesn't go to school anymore. As a matter of fact, he ditched until we put him into a continuation school where I learned how to do a whole bunch of other bad things. And and then he stopped going to school entirely. So we wanted to let you know that. And I explained what my mom and dad were like, right? Dad, very permissive. Mom, more the detective type. So my mom says, we got to ground him, right? This is what if we punish him, if we take things from him, if we don't allow these things, then, excuse me, then, he'll fly right. And my dad said, I'm going to take him to work with me. Not sure whether I don't know what he was thinking. We never talked about it. I'm not sure whether he um, thought that I'd get tired and run back to school, or if he figured, look, if he's not going to go to school, we can't make him go to school, but he's got to do something. My immediate thought was, this is amazing. I get to go work and earn a paycheck. Oh, I was just over the moon excited about it. And I got to work, and it was a brick manufacturing environment. So some hard labor going on in there. They handed me a shovel. And they said, if you do a really good job, well, you can work your way up to a broom. And from there, maybe we could talk about some rolling equipment like forklifts and water trucks and things like that. And smartly, intelligently on my dad's part, I wound up doing a lot of the work there and learning the business. It was 120 employees. So I did that. And that was at age 17, and I worked there till I was 40. At age 30, I was a general manager, vice president, ran the business. And like many people who have an extreme personality, like many people who are alcoholics like me, um, we excel when we put our mind to something. I think I put about 10% into the recovery that I put into getting loaded and into other things that I did. And I got clean and sober from doing that, right? But anyway, so I did that with my dad for a long time. Along the way, I decided that with my broken picker, I selected somebody and got married. My parents didn't like her. We held each other hostage and we were drinking partners and a bunch of other stuff that we did together. And it was Days of Wine and Roses for anybody who's familiar with that movie. If you're not, it's probably good to get familiar with it. So we were both really sick. And my parents didn't like it, right? And she didn't like them anyway. So that made my life difficult too because of that and working with my father. And at age 40 and my dad was 70, I think I think his late stage PTSD started getting to him. Remember, he was a Holocaust survivor. And I think that, he started acting out and doing things that were very irrational that I don't even need to talk about here, but things that weren't like him at all. Taking risks, doing things that weren't smart, etc. In his personal life. And one day he came to me and he told me that I needed to carry on the family name and have a baby. And my wife and I had not planned on it. We were very selfish and just we weren't going to have kids. We were too busy doing us, right? And so when that didn't happen, he and I were got in a big fight that day, and I left that job. And that was 25 years ago. And to this day, I don't know if I got fired or I quit. But my father and I never talked again. And that's a big part of my story, a big chapter in my story, a very difficult thing that I grieved through, that I've dealt with, that a lot of people go, what? You can overcome anything and everything as long as you put your mind to it. I believe that and are willing to do the work around it. So I found out a few years after he and I parted company. I had worked with him from age 17 to 40. I found out he had leukemia, so I called their house, and my father never answered the phone. Just, that was mom's job. Remember house phones that were wired in that. And my dad answered the phone when I called over there, and I was going to ask my mom. I was prepared to say, "Put dad on. I want to see if I can come and see him because he's got leukemia." And he answered the phone, and I said, "Dad," and he said, "Who is this?" And I said, "It's your son, David." He said, "I don't have a son." And he hung up the phone. And
Oh,
that was the last thing that my dad's ever said to me.
oh,
Yeah. So when he died, and I got a message to stay away from stay away from him, stay away from them. Everybody was angry with me. The family, money became very important within the family. And so a lot of people succumbed to that. There were strings, right? And I call it the pressure under the wallet. Anyhow, so I show up when he died, I showed up at his funeral. And my family my mom and my sisters and their kids were sitting in one place, and my now ex, and I were sitting in another place. It was very strange because a lot of people who had come to this funeral knew my father through work and they knew me, but nobody else worked there. So it was odd. These folks were very kind in coming to his service and saying hello and condolences to the rest of the family, but coming over to me because they knew me and they knew that I had left the business a few years before. And are you okay? I didn't drink, but I used other things to prop myself up when I went there to that. And a year later, I wound up in treatment. It was this horrible thing that had happened to me became the greatest gift of my life. This losing my dad in that way and not being present for him and not having any tools and not being able to connect with him and reconnect with him, the most horrible thing became the gift. It was almost to the day from that he died to I wound up in treatment because I went way over the edge. One of the things that I've worked on that's really helped me so much that thank God that recovery's given to me and people who came before me helped work on with me and some therapy too has been grief work, has been able to, like St. Francis prayer, it's been able to understand rather than me to have to be understood. When I tell my story now, sitting here, it doesn't feel like it did when I was first telling my story at all, or even 10 years ago. I have a great deal of comfort that it brings to get to share because some people understand. Some people need to hear it, as horrible as it can be. So I go to that treatment center and they helped me. They said, we're going to meet you where you're at. We're going to do a lot of processing. We're going to work on your underlying causes and conditions. And we want you to be as honest as you can be. We want you to leave your stuff right here in this group, right? And I looked around at the other men in my group, and I looked at Patrick, who's still a friend of mine, who was here last year at our party that I talked about. And I said, well, I can be really honest, but how revealing do I need to be? Now that's some full of shit stuff right there. Let's be really honest about it now. Boy, talk about controlling it. I'm only going to tell you what I want, and I'll be truthful with that. But it's like looking under a little deck of cards, right? I'm only going to show you some things. The group laughed. I mean, they already got it. They'd been there for a few days, up to a month maybe, and they understood it. And I thank God that Patrick was put in my life too, because I used to go there being my manipulative self, and I used to bring him an apple and put my chair right next to him. He's this big giant biker dude whose eyes went like this, and he to some people they were scared of him. I loved him. I thought he was the sweetest guy in the world. I went and I would sit right next to him, and he gave me what I needed. He gave me care, kindness, and compassion and love. And he knew what I needed. He knew exactly what I needed. But he also knew what the other guys needed too. He was just so talented. Anyway, we did a lot of processing in that group, and I talked about the stuff that I spoke of here, a lot of family stuff, a lot of things that I was scared of. And part of my treatment plan was, he said, "You're really angry." I am. How did he see that? I laugh about it now. It's like, how did he know I was angry? Which I'm just going to say it as easy as it is to joke about. It pissed me off. Like, what do you mean I'm angry? I'm the nicest guy in the world. Don't you love me? She's like, no, you're really angry. And it was back in the day. So he handed me the VHS tape and said, go to the VCR and I want you to watch this. It's about anger management. We're putting you in a special course along with a few other people because you're angry. And if you're not, boy, you should be. And that helped me a lot. And the other thing that I think helped me as much as anything else while I was there, and still does to this day, was working on my codependency. Not being judgmental, it's just something that I really believe in. I think untreated codependency is the biggest issue we have in people who are even in recovery now. Because we don't study it, we don't know a lot about it, and sometimes it makes people angry when you say, well, have you ever tried some coda? Have you ever tried a little bit of this work? Because that's who I was long before I ever drank that drink, long before I ever started using and drinking. My biggest problem was me and control issues, or letting people control me. And so they actually put me in a 5-day workshop there where I studied me and my codependency and helped me to learn about forgiveness, which was key, and helped me to learn about grief and how to do that properly. So those were two real key areas that I got to work on. But I think one of the biggest things that I learned about, which recovery has really carried me through, or carried through with me, is knowing that I have a part in absolutely everything. I have a part. Am I responsible? Am I at fault? Sometimes. Sometimes I just stayed in a relationship too long. Sometimes I was just standing on a corner when that bus ran me over. I don't know, but I have a part. And once I recognize that part, I can either get to forgiveness or including forgiving myself, or I can make amends. And that's a nice fork in the road that I can get to. But first I have to recognize what my part was. They helped me with that too. The absolute best thing that this treatment center did was they said, we want you to go find a 12-step recovery group. At the time they didn't have, there's choices now, but at the time there was no Wellbriety, Refuge, Smart, etc. And they're great. That's wonderful. Find something. But 12-step recovery worked so well for me, and I've seen it work so well for so many people. They said, we want you to go and we want you to get a sponsor. You need a Sherpa, you need a guide, you need somebody who's done this before you have. You need somebody to hold that lantern as you go up that mountain. Somebody who's going to love you and work with you, and most importantly, take you through the steps. Find someone to take you through the steps. Because I'm like, well, what do I look for? Somebody who's got what you want. Not a big house, not a car, not a pretty wife, David. Somebody who's got some characteristics and traits and things that you want. And I found a beautiful human being. His name was Sean. He died a few years ago of cancer, but he was doing what they told me to do. He had a sponsor. He went to a lot of meetings, connected with people. He had tons of service work, and I followed him around. He didn't even have a lot of time, about a year and a half, but he had good quality time, and he was a good man. And so he took me through the steps. We did work. And I got involved in some programs like Back to Basics. I started taking other people through the steps, and I found something. I finally found something that I really liked and I wanted to be a part of that was magical. I watched people come in and I watched their eyes clear up and their skin. Maybe their weight went up or down. Not that that's that important, but I watched people change. And then I watched them land and I watched their personality soften and I watched them get to work and do the same thing. And I absolutely loved it, and I love it to this day. And I keep doing it because if I keep doing it, I keep getting what I'm getting. And the before picture was I was doing what I was doing and getting what I was getting then, and it wasn't so great. So I keep doing that today. I got involved in a sober living business when I had 3 years. I started, more is better. So I opened three houses instead of one, two men's house and a women's house. I'm laughing because now when people want to do that, this is all in jest. When they ask me, I share things with them. I have uh, all the processes, I have procedures and rules and everything. But the first thing I tell them is they need their head examined. It's hard work, right? And you're dealing with people like me, it's really stressful. So you got to have it together. You have to know what compassion fatigue is, when to take a step back and keep your skills as sharp as you possibly can because you're going to need them. This is not, the sober living, the treatment, those things. That's not program. That's not recovery. You're working in it. So I did that, and I worked for Riverside County Mental Health for a while, helping people find homes and jobs. And that was wonderful. Um, and I did a bunch of other things, but the thing that really I love the most, I had thousands of hours, not bragging because it saved me, thousands of hours in volunteer work at the treatment centers. They let me in, they gave me keys to the place. It was amazing. They let me drive their vehicles, and I was there and I had a purpose. I finally had a purpose in life. It was way beyond making something to sell to buy something. It was way beyond making a bigger paycheck, taking another trip, buying something else that's shiny, and then looking for something more better, different, and bigger. And really, that's why I tell people my life today is so amazing. especially if you're new. If you're new, it's not about those things being fixed. For me, when the message is it's how you handle things that come to you no matter what. Because as we like to say, life's in session. Things happen. Good things, great things, horrible things. I'm grateful for all of it. And that brings me to one of my favorite topics, which is gratitude, right? The first 3 years in recovery, I went to a 6 a.m. meeting. Amy will tell you because we know each other real well. I'm not up at 6 a.m. anymore. But for the first 3 years, I went to a 6 a.m. meeting. It was 45 minutes long. That's it. And the person would be selected to lead. It's called attitude adjustment. It's in the Palm Desert area. So I'm in the Coachella Valley. And you get selected, you lead for 5 minutes, you pick a topic, and people can share on it. And I remember sitting there in the first year going, how come everybody picks gratitude? When are they going to pick something else? Gratitude, schmatitude. I mean, come on. You know, let's talk about boundaries or something. Well, now I know why they pick gratitude, because if I don't get into that space, I wind up taking things for granted. My ego and my pride get big, and I don't appreciate the things that I need to. It's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. The very first thing I got into a habit of, before I even look at my phone to see what time it is, I call it 1, 2, 3 before you pee. So, and as I get older, I got to get to that faster. I get up in the morning and before I look at the phone, I'm like, thank you, God. Thank you so much for my life today. Thank you for the things I don't have, the things that I don't need. Thank you for, today I have a cold, for example. I don't, but if I did, I'm grateful for that cold. I go to the dentist. Who likes the dentist? I don't, but it's progressive. I'm taking care of my teeth. I can pay for it. This is a wonderful thing that I get to go and I put myself in that space. But first thing in the morning, gratitude. If I go to grab my phone or if I go to get into work, no, I have to get in that space. This morning I had, I don't know, 10 or 15 text messages, and they're all from people that are sending me, their 24 hours quote or just for today or some message of positivity, a quote that Amy gets it, a quote that I send out on a daily that's just positive. And so now I'm connected to God in this gratitude space. And I'm connected to these people who have texted me. I got to text them back. I can't not text them back. And on some days I send out, I've never counted, but if I had to guess, 200 to 300 of those texts go out. And I do it individually. So I have to think about them. I get to think about them and send that message out to them. So there's another connection. I still go to meetings. I'm still super grateful for the life that I have, as I was just saying. To get to work, I balance my recovery. It's got to come first no matter what. But I have a nice life. I have family. I like my work. I love having fun. And those things are all really important too. I get to do all of it. So, not sure how much time I have left, but let's get to the meat of this thing, shall we? Spirituality. Spirituality, it's everything. I love when I'm sitting in a meeting because, I'm still a little bit opinionated. I may not say it out loud. I have pretty darn good filters, I must admit. However, when I hear someone go, and the spiritual part of the program, when they're sharing, and I go, no, no, that's the program. And there is no spiritual part to me. That's me, just David's belief. It's a spiritual program, period. I don't have a program, by the way. Mine sucked and got me in trouble, right? There's a program, and if I follow it the best that I can, I get a really good day, right? Do good, feel good. And so what happened for me was, even though I was raised, going to Hebrew school and getting the bar mitzvah and doing those things, and I always believed that there was something bigger than me, I could never draw a picture of it because we didn't have that. There was no picture of it. It was like a cloud in the sky with, rays of sunshine coming through it. Those kind of things reminded me of God. Well, today it's a lot different. Thanks to recovery and thanks to being involved and thanks to people like both of you and many others, I believe in lots of things. And I think it goes to one place. I believe in Jesus. I believe in Buddha. I believe in Western philosophies of Native Americans. I believe in all of it. Um, God to me is love, and God to me works with me. I refer to mine in the feminine because I never met a woman who could not kick my butt. And so for me, God's female. Plus I know it agitates some men a little bit. I'm like, oh, well, go work on that. God's a woman. God is feminine, I should say. The energy is. It's Mother Nature. It's love. It's soft. It's caring. It's forgiving. And it's the most important thing in my life. It's also taught me to catch myself when I'm judging. I don't believe anybody who says they don't judge. We all do. But how do I treat you? That's the important thing. When I asked some men in the program who were old guys like I am now, when I was younger, I said, when is this thing going to stop doing that and start being, and they laughed. And they said, oh, it never stops, David. It just changes. You get to the recovery piece a little bit faster. And then you're going to be okay once you get to that tool or that thing that you need to do. If you're angry, you need to pray for that person, right? You don't say I hope something bad happens to them. You pray for them. You'll feel better about it yourself. But more than anything else, that's the go-to. That's always the go back to. So you start with gratitude in the morning. I can always do over during the day, stop and go, you know what? You're not being very grateful because nobody is sharing right, dressing right, driving right. Go look in the mirror because the problem is you, pal. Something's wrong with you. You're not being accepting, right? You're being expecting. And then I know that I'm off kilter. But when I get like that, if I'm angry, if I'm sad, if I'm not accepting, if I can't self soothe or parent myself for a minute and get myself right so I don't get left, there's people that will help me. Most of all, I can pray, right? I go to that power and ask to take it and ask for me to have the tools to be able to get right. If I'm really stuck, I need to talk to someone about it, right? So I can write, I can, excuse me, I can journal about it, certainly talk to you. I can get out of myself and call somebody and ask them how they're doing. Go help my neighbor, for heaven's sake. There's always somebody I know who's suffering that needs a phone call, for example. So those are the tools that I get to use during the day now that I've at least got to this part. But I'm excited every day that I get up because I don't know what's going to come next. Every day is a positive thing for me, even when I'm not feeling so good. I know that I can turn that around. I think you've heard enough out of me. I know I have. The sound of my own voice. I'm done.
Thank
I'm
you for
really
sharing.
grateful for both of you. Thank you so much for letting me do that. I
Thank you
probably
for your
needed it and
story.
didn't know.
Yeah. And so, how can people find you?
Well, that's a good question. There's a couple ways. One of them is by phone. I answer my phone all the time. I didn't used to. I didn't open the mail, and now I always answer my phone. And I'm excited, like I said. So my phone number is area code 760-396-8369. 760-396-8369. And I'm also at Coach David Mallow or Recovery GPS. I have a
Okay.
couple different websites. Anyway, yeah.
I'll put that information in the notes too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else I can do for you? You just let me know.
We
Thank
will.
you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, we
I
appreciate your
appreciate you.
story, David. Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. We appreciate you.
I hope so. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.